Hi everyone. I've been meaning for quite a long time to share with you guys um, the first ever radio that really got me interested in shortwave, and this is it. It's a Binatone Worldstar, and as you can see, it's quite old. I think it dates from probably the mid to late 1970s. I first saw this radio. It used to be advertised in the newspaper, probably the Daily Mirror, I think, is what my dad used to read back in the day. And it used to appear quite often. The advert used to state things like, 1 minute you're tuned to London, and the next minute, you can go globe trotting around the world. And that really caught my imagination because, I've always wanted to travel from a young age, but obviously back in those days didn't really have the money to do so, and the thought of having a radio that you could tune into stations from all over the world and learn about new cultures, listen to different types of music, I thought was fascinating. And I decided there and then that one day I would own that radio. So anyway, sometime later we moved house, and in doing so we had to go and stay with my aunt and uncle for a few weeks. And when we arrived there, lo and behold, my uncle had one of these as his bedside radio, and I was really taken aback. And I think at that point, my interest in shortwave was kind of cemented, and I knew that I wanted to get my own shortwave radio. So, which I eventually did. This one I bought from eBay about 10 years ago, and it cost me 99 pence, which was a bit of a bargain. But what it made me realise was that this being, although this was the first radio that really got me interested in shortwave, the performance actually isn't very good. Although the audio is actually very good, as you might expect from an old radio. What's interesting is that this radio, was marketed as, a shortwave communications receiver. You could listen to stations all over the world. But it actually only, in terms of shortwave, it only tunes from basically the top of the X band to 4.4 megahertz. So basically most of the tropical band, and there's nothing above that. It has medium wave, 540 to 1600 kilohertz, long wave, and then FM from 88 to 174 megahertz. So sort of limited really in terms of the band coverage. But yet marketed as a shortwave communications receiver. And I think partly what caught my eye with this radio was the fact that it had this map with the time zones, as a lot of the radios did of that era, and this kind of compass style dial, so you could effectively rotate the inner part of the dial to align your time zone, which on this map, of course, for the UK is 12, with the correct time, and then you could then read off, the time in any other time zone. Obviously we use UTC these days, as they probably did in those days, but it was just a clever way of determining, quickly what the time would be in the country that you were listening to, the local time. I think what I did was I actually ended up drawing out a kind of matrix, like a lookup chart. So whatever time it was in the UK, I could look across and determine what the time was in another country. So squelch control, which to be honest with you doesn't really do very much. In fact, I can probably demonstrate that. Let me just turn it on.
For people to help another people. So
you can see it's got a tuning LED. So this is radio 4 on long wave.
We felt sorry for them from the first moment.
So quite nice audio. It's very sensitive to noise, to QRM.
Sometimes you need a push.
It will detect the slightest amount of noise from a laptop. It's obviously not, the electronics aren't very well shielded.
I did offer my hotel for like few families, and also a lot of volunteers
that's the squelch
to help
on max.
Stay here as well.
The minimum.
Every other citizen, like me, is actually doing things like that.
So it has a separate tone control, volume control. You can switch between battery and electric. But it's not a very well performing radio, but I love this radio because this is basically the radio that got me interested in shortwave. And to be able to own one now, really means a lot. Even though it won't probably do very much for my shortwave DX channel on YouTube. But I thought it would be interesting to share it with you. This is basically where it all started for me. And even though I don't listen to it very often, it's nice to have it in the corner of the shack. I can glance at it every now and then, and it takes me back to the old days when I was a kid and I first got interested in this great hobby. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little trip down memory lane. Thanks for watching.